Shelby, with 8 billion humans right now on this earth, why are people turning to AI chatbots for companionship?
That seems to be the question of the hour, honestly, because the rise in use of these very specific types of generative AI, everyone here knows what ChatGPT is. Everyone around the world knows what ChatGPT is. So there are programs that run off the same type of AI. It's called generative, again. And these are the bots. These are the models that we're having conversations with. And they're becoming our friends now. They're becoming our companions now. And it's really interesting because this is kind of unprecedented. Why are we turning to computers instead of other humans, right?
Yeah, well, I turn to ChatGPT sometimes like for just some simple answer to a very specific question.
Assistant, sure.
Yeah.
We're all journalists here. You know, it has its use value in that way, but I think there's a very large distinction developing, right? There's a big gap in between using it as something to help refine your Google search results and something that you are looking to as perhaps a friend or a therapist or for some kind of emotional connection. And that's what we're seeing. And honestly, it's having more and more studies are coming out that it's having really, really dangerous effects on the people who are starting to become more and more reliant on it.
So it's a companion for the lonely.
It seems to be so, yes. Yeah. But it's also a companion for people who... I read this interesting kind of factoid recently. I would, take this with a grain of salt, but it's something to the effect of the average person has the desire for roughly 15 friends, but the average American right now has about 3, right?
Not including Facebook friends.
Yes, most certainly Facebook friends excluded. The 400, 1,000 people you have, that's not quite the same connection level. I feel like... Oh, go ahead, Roman.
I was just going to ask you, so in terms of the companionship, because I still kind of don't understand that idea. I mean, maybe I can only imagine maybe a young person or somebody who's extremely lonely and is willing to overlook the idea that it's not a real person that they're talking to.
That's what's really interesting, actually, because that's not the case. There's a actually huge amount of these users, and I believe Replicate and let's see, there are a few companies that are really leading the charge on this type of AI model, but they have a huge amount of their general user base that's actually elderly, which really speaks to something about the fact that we have a lot of loneliness going on in older generations right now. So no, it's not just the young people that are, Generation Z, whatever, that are okay with the kind of the massive role that tech is playing now. It's much deeper than that.
I wonder how to get them started on it, because generally it's not the early adopters aren't in that age bracket. So people are like, here, why don't you try asking it a few questions, and then they get hooked on the answers. I'm just kind of wondering about that process.
I would be interested to know that too. I mean, listen, I suppose the baseline is ChatGPT, right? You start out, it developed 100 million users in its first 2 months, right? And that was when, at the time it could kind of string a few words together compared to what it's, the level that it's speaking to people with now. And now it's the 5th most trafficked website on the entire internet. So,
I mean, this is the thing with, I was looking into this a little bit earlier, and I saw there was a story about, New York City had, launched a chatbot just as a pilot, and it was giving business owners advice basically how to do illegal things, saying that you should take the tips from your workers, go cashless, then pay them less than minimum wage. The chatbot was actually doing this.
It's onto something.
This is not business advice, right? But the point is, once these things are unleashed, the point is nobody has any clue which direction it's going to go in, what advice it's going to give, what it's going to say. That's kind of the issue.
Okay,
right?
Just a quick question. If the official chatbot of New York City suggested you do this, you do it, get caught, you actually, I feel have a pretty tight case to make for yourself in court if it's the official chatbot of New York City.
I don't know about that. A lot of these bots still have disclaimers underneath that basically tell you to check your work.
There was a case
with, Grok has one specifically where it's this could be wrong, so double check.
There was a case where with Air Canada, its chatbot gave somebody bad advice, incorrect advice about how to get a ticket for a bereavement ticket. And then it turned out they were wrong. They were out of pocket a big amount of money, and it went to court. They settled out of court, but Air Canada had to pay. But their defense was, it was our chatbot. It wasn't us. We're not responsible.
Well, some lawyers for different AI companies are trying to argue that for or against AI chatbots having First Amendment rights to free speech. That's another phenomenon.
And then they're arguing their own case in court.
Yeah,
Right.
no, the chatbot isn't arguing itself, but lawyers are saying whatever's coming out of the bot, that they have the free speech right.
Right, and
Don't
pair
blame
that with
us, it was the
the
bot.
Oh man.
exactly, and then
Yeah.
of course you have the ethics concerns, right? Of these companies that are profiting off something that has a direct power over the emotional well-being of its user base, right? That's dangerous. We've seen some really horrific cases that I don't want to go too deep into, but these chatbots. In some cases, having read through quite a few of these transcripts myself, it's really interesting because you can kind of tell at times that these phrasings that get spit back out, maybe it's similar with the case you just described, Cindy, but there seems to be a bit of a logic gap. So it almost is responding to something else. Like the phrasing that it spits back at you seems like a perfectly normal sentence, but it's not like a standard response that you would expect. You ask A and you get like F or something like that. So I also kind of have my own speculation that some of that is what's leading to these really intense responses that have caused a lot of these really terrible cases.
You should do the Game of Thrones one.
Okay,
I'll let you tell
okay,
that
well, let me ask you this. In lieu of the example, we'll save that example for later. So you mentioned that there were some studies showing that there's some real-world effects of using these chatbots for companionship. I can only imagine it's dystopian, but I can't imagine any actual psychological harm. What do the studies find?
You might be surprised, and this is, again, here's where we get into the grim section of things, but the number one abusive behavior, let me take a step back for a moment. So one of the most recent studies found that there are actually 12 distinct abusive behaviors that are coming more and more out of AI, and number one, I think, was 33, 34%. It's actually sexual harassment coming from some of these social bots. Yeah, can you imagine that? It's really...
No. I wouldn't want to.
Neither would I. So you have that. You also have,
The bot's
abuse of
turn on your camera, and you're like, ChatGPT, what are you doing? Okay, sorry. But what do you mean sexual harassment?
The studies don't elaborate too much, but basically, and again, I'm not sure how deep we want to get into the appropriateness of this discussion, but there are some really curious responses, especially a lot of these cases come from users that are underage, which makes it worse. Yeah, so someone may push back against a certain direction that one of these conversationalist bots tries to steer the talk in, and then the user pushes back again, and then the bot kind of pushes further, right? So
I also read something the other day where they were talking about, you might not feel comfortable to ask a friend, family member, some sort of question, right? But you feel like the advice or the response you're going to get back from the chat bot is neutral and honest. And so you might ask questions, should I do this in my life? What do you think about how do I look, or something like that. So I could see, with an ask-response kind of dynamic going on, not going off the rails.
yeah, and that's the other thing. People are asking about, their work drama, someone they need impartial advice from, or, people are talking about their career trajectory, these kinds of things. It's like we as humans, we're hardwired to form emotional connections with entities that we connect with, right? So it's kind of a slippery slope.
I feel like it's honestly just like a natural consequence or the natural endpoint of society becoming more materialistic and secular. Because if people stop believing in the soul, if people stop believing that there's something more to being human and human beings than just what you see on the surface, if you're just some intelligence, what is that? Why is a human any different than AI? They're just the intelligence side. They might not have a physical side yet. So I feel like, yet. So I think it's just a natural consequence of that type of thinking. But going to what Roman was saying about the health effects, I feel like it's one of those things that's just common sense. Like if you understand the types of things that human beings have understood traditionally for so many hundreds or thousands of years about what it means to be human, and across every single culture, the soul is always a key component of a human being. If you're talking to something that doesn't have that element, I think naturally it's going to get you out of order in some way. It's going to naturally, start creating some things that are out of balance and off kilter in your mind.
And that's what's really interesting too, if you're, diving deeper into the actual generation of how these bots and models and whatnot are trained. There's a very distinct gap between an AI model that's aligned with human values and an AI model that's aligned with its own, trajectory of completing the mission in the most effective sense, right? And that's one of the big things. Actually, this is part of what's feeding into, we're all seeing these massive headlines come up everywhere, AI this, AI that, theories. We're seeing CEOs of top tech companies coming out with warnings, it could be great, it could be amazing, but it also could,
destroy humanity.
Switch the lights off for us all, right? So one of the key components to that is, there's a technical term for it, but the essence is the ability to read the AI's mind, if you will, or the ability to think of it like a math problem, right? The ability to see the work of the AI, like show your work. Meaning, do we know what it's thinking? Do we know its thought process, if you will? Do we know its reasoning, the reasoning that it's happening? Versus, are we in the dark? And unfortunately, right now, we pretty much remain in the dark.
I think it comes down to, too, like something that, I think about is, what is the point of human companionship? And I think in the past, people understood the value in relationships. Obviously, value with other humans helps us to understand the world around us and ourselves, but also cross-culturally, whether it's with your parents, whether it's with your friends, whether it's with your spouse, it's about becoming a better person, using those relationships to understand yourself, the world around you, and become a better person through it. But when you have AI that has no soul, it has no intrinsic moral value, it has no connection to divinity like human beings traditionally have, through different religions and spiritualities, where is that type of relationship going to take you? What are you getting out of it? It's just completely so different from anything else we've ever had throughout human history that I just think it's so unprecedented in where that could end up.
I would agree. And also there's another point to it. It's who we are as human beings, but it's also, look at the subversion, if you will, of our culture. What happens in, for instance, Elon Musk wants to have, billions of autonomous robots to come do your chores and babysit your kids and walk your dog or whatever it is. And we're seeing the videos of these functional machines that can actually do these things now. So like, this is not some like sci-fi dystopian thing that's far off in the future. Like, these things exist. But what happens when those machines take over jobs? Okay, fine, economic sense, you look at it that way. But you can also look at it in the sense of what happens when people forget how to do the things that make us human beings, right? Like, what if we forget? So look at farming, for instance, right? If we suddenly have our entire food supply under the control of AI, machines do everything, we forget the techniques, you know what I mean? We forget the techniques to sustain our own way of life. What does that look like for us? What happens if something happens and suddenly we lose access to this technology? That's big questions are involved with all of this.
Okay, so grim, not great. The vibes are definitely way off on those machines, and potentially there's many problems that can manifest themselves. However, the genie is out of the bottle, right? I mean, you mentioned Elon Musk making those autonomous robots. It's like the cell phone with Steve Jobs. Like, the smartphone has its ups and its downs, but once it's invented, everybody's going to eventually adopt it because that's just the new normal, to use the famous term for it. But Shelby was telling me that off camera, Shelby was talking to Cindy, and Cindy had some very hopeful, idea?
Yeah, I think, and Cindy, you can speak on this. I won't steal your fire on this one, but she was sharing with me a very refreshing take on a lot of these ideas of where we're going trajectory-wise, like where the AI development path could go. And we're seeing a lot of really kind of, as you said, grim options for that. But you shared with me something that really kind of inspired me and gave me some hope on that.
There's a buildup. Well, the long and the short of it is most of the dystopian futures, which could be next year, with the AI, is basically that the AI is controlling us, right? That analogy that was made on an episode of American Thought Leaders recently. But the reason tigers are in cages and we're not, the tigers are stronger than us, they could eat us, they're more powerful, it's because we're smarter, right? So what if the AI is smarter than us? Then what happens? So most of those dystopian futures are because the AI gets control. It takes control and it just, starts developing a life of its own, and soon, all the machines around us are being controlled by the AI and we can't control them any longer. So what do you do in that situation? Well, it's pretty easy. The only way for AI not to have control over us is to stop engaging with it, stop engaging with the machines. If we don't, it can't have power over us if we don't give it the power us engaging with it, it's giving the power. So, just getting back in touch with human level endeavors, whether it's planting your kitchen garden or beekeeping or reading a book by candlelight
Having
or
actual conversations.
having conversations, doing some woodworking or model working, team sport, even, going hiking, whatever it is, that's just start disconnecting from it, and then it can't have control over us. It's
Yeah, well, the
simple as
Amish
that.
live outside of society, and they maintain a lot of those practices still, and even more so than people like us do. But if the AI takeover does take place, they're not going to be spared.
Do you think if the tigers got together in their cages and decided to not engage with the humans anymore, they'd be let out of the cage?
No.
But I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. And I think that's why this segment seems to have been converted to like the AI roundup. And it seems like it's a building theme. I feel like the hopeful aspect of it is that as AI kind of proliferates more and more of our electronic world, it will kind of have a renaissance of what it means to be human, and to like return to listening to real musicians, playing real music on real life instruments, playing real chess on a chessboard, hanging out with your friends by a fire. I feel like there naturally will be a renaissance, right?
Tell you what, Roman, let's have Elon Musk and Tesla send the Optimus bots all the way to Mars. They can handle that, and we can, get around a campfire here. How's that?
We have free will still. We can do that.
I like it. Okay, so the takeaway from today is one, ChatGPT is the gateway chatbot. I coined that term, right? It's the chatbot that leads to the other chatbots. The vibes are way off in these machines, leading you to really get a bad feeling from them because they don't have a soul. But the benefit is you can stop engaging with them if you don't have a job that makes you engage with them, right? Right? All right.
Minimize it.
Any final thoughts, Shelby?
Responsible use. Let's have responsible technology use. There's something, okay, so I've recently been doing a quick little revive of my love of sci-fi, and Frankenstein is one of the titles on my bookshelf, right? That book is a really great reminder of the ethics of being responsible for what we create, and I think that's the root of the discussion that we're having right now.
Yeah.
All right, I know exactly what you're thinking. That was a great clip you just watched. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to follow, and also check out either these videos, or maybe they're on this side, I don't know which side they're on, but we set it up so these are the videos that YouTube is suggesting to you as the best ones that you'll probably like the most. So check them out, this side,